So, you think you know how to invest in Africa? Well, you might want to toss that old playbook out the window because the rules for 2025 are being completely rewritten as we speak. Today, we're going to break down 4 principles straight from the experts on the ground that are absolutely essential for success. I mean it. If you have a strategy for the African market, that's great. But get ready because we're about to challenge some of your biggest assumptions. The old rules? They're gone, and a whole new reality is taking their place. Now, the insights we're talking about today come directly from a strategy consultancy called ReConnected Africa. These guys are actually on the ground, and they've pinpointed 4 core principles that you absolutely have to know. Doesn't matter if you're a startup founder or a seasoned pro. So let's dive into the first one. Okay, principle number 1 is all about recognizing the massive, and I mean massive, macro changes that are happening right now. This isn't just some small tweak. We're talking about a fundamental shift in the entire political and economic climate across the continent. You know, the biggest driver behind this whole shift comes down to one word: debt. African governments are realizing they can slash their state debt by stepping back from managing huge infrastructure projects themselves. So what are they doing instead? They're swinging the gates wide open to private foreign investment to get the job done. And believe me, this isn't just talk. We're seeing concrete action. They're overhauling business and investment visa laws. In fact, they're actually increasing the required investment amounts to weed out the small-timers and attract serious players. But in return, they're beefing up the benefits, like making it way easier for investors to bring their families along. And at the same time, central banks are hitting private banks with record fines to force them to comply, which is creating a much safer, more transparent financial system for foreign money. All right, let's get into our second principle. This is a detail that trips up even the savviest international investors. I'm talking about navigating Africa's incredibly complex currency maze. First, just take a second to appreciate the sheer scale of what we're dealing with. We're talking about a continent with over 50 different countries. And get this, inside those countries, you have over 42 official currencies. Every single one of them is constantly fluctuating against the others. Ignoring this is a rookie mistake that can have huge, huge consequences. And this slide just shows you perfectly why this is so critical. Look, South Africa gets a ton of investor attention, right? But its currency, the rand, is actually one of the most volatile in Africa. Meanwhile, its neighbor, Botswana, has the pula, which is one of the most stable. The takeaway here is crystal clear. Doing your homework on currency stability is just as important as researching the market itself. Okay, on to principle number 3. And this one requires a real mental reset for a lot of folks. It's time to look past those old-school global payment systems like SWIFT, the network most international banks use, and really understand Africa's incredible leap forward in fintech. I absolutely love this quote from the source material. De-SWIFT your mind. It just perfectly captures the new perspective you need. The system that much of the world sees as the global standard is often considered slow, inconvenient, and pretty outdated in many African markets. You have to understand the financial world here is completely mobile first. Systems like M-Pesa and MoneyGram, they're not just for sending a few bucks to a friend. No, these are fully compliant, totally legal systems for major business deals. You can move up to 1 million South African rand in a single instantaneous transaction, all from an app on your phone. The level of efficiency is just wow. And here's the real kicker. The source says pretty bluntly that a lot of investors from Europe or America, with what it calls their primitive banking systems, are in for a serious surprise. The responsibility is on them to get up to speed on Africa's more technically advanced financial infrastructure. Honestly, it can make moving capital way easier than what they're used to back home. So that brings us to our 4th and final principle. And this one is really all about your mindset. It's about shifting your focus away from chasing short-term gains and toward long-term wealth creation by using the local stock exchanges. Now, a lot of foreign investors worry that African exchanges might take longer to see a return compared to, say, New York or London. But this playbook totally reframes that idea. It's not a weakness, it's a feature. The system is designed to encourage you to build a sustainable long-term asset portfolio, not just to hunt for a quick buck. And the opportunities here are incredibly diverse and sophisticated. You've got the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, which is the biggest on the continent and deeply connected to global markets. Then you've got the Nairobi Securities Exchange in Kenya, which is a pioneer in things like green bonds and real estate investment trusts. And like we said before, Botswana's exchange is a model of stability. The trick is to find the exchange that really lines up with your specific goals. So we've gone through the shifting landscape, the currency mise, the fintech leap, and the long-term portfolio approach. The big question now is, how do you actually take all these principles and turn them into a winning strategy on the ground? This is where you really need an expert guide to navigate all that complexity. As the team at ReConnected Africa, the source of this whole playbook, puts it, their job is simple: to take the guesswork out of the equation. And as a boutique strategy consultancy, this is exactly what they do. They're basically expert navigators. They design custom strategies and detailed plans to help investors and businesses not just enter, but actually thrive in these super dynamic markets. Look, as we've seen today, the old way of investing in Africa is pretty much obsolete. The new rules demand a whole new level of understanding and a completely different approach. The game has already changed. So the only question left is your strategy ready for it?